Fine. So you come to program 20, right? So in P20, you can see this is a very small piece of code. And if you see the file name, it is something P20 underscore show the use of command line arguments. Right now, what are command line arguments? Command line arguments is like if you are using Windows, you actually type dir and you will see the directory contents of that current directory, right? So this is a Windows system, or else in Linux, for example, if you write ls, this does a similar functionality. Okay, it works here also. So let's say you are using ls minus l, right? So let's say dir slash b. So slash b basically is known as argument, right? And argument means in this case it will actually, okay, it is not working. Let me just show you on a normal command line window. So when I type here dir, it shows me the list of file contents, right? So basically I have a desktop directory, I have a documents directory, right? And if I do dir slash b only gives me the base name. See, I don't see the details. In the previous case, I was seeing the date created, time modified, whether it's a directory, what is the size, etc. But when you do dir slash b, you can only see the base names, that is the file name or the folder name. In Windows, you can actually just do slash question mark. That will show you the various command line switches or command line parameters that you can use to do this. For example, when you do your program like GCC, and let me just do here GCC p20 dot c, right? So basically what is happening here, GCC is the compiler, right? GNU-C compiler, that is GCC, and this is the program name that you are compiling, right? So for GCC, this is basically the command line argument that you are specifying, right? This is the command line argument that is specifying. So what will GCC do? It will consume this particular file and produce a.out or a.exe. So in Windows, it is a.exe. So dot slash a.exe. So you can see that the program is executed and giving the output. The program name is a.exe. Now, if you see this particular code, you can see there are two things, int main, and you are accepting two things, argc and a character array, which is argv, right? So basically, argc basically gives us the count of variables which are passed at the command line. I explain again. Argc basically, arg stands for argument. Let me just write it here. Arg is equal to argument, sorry, arg, right? Then c is equal to the count and v is equal to the variables. So when I say argc, that means I am saying argument count, okay, and argv means argument variables. Fine. So now in this case, what happens when you are actually typing a.exe, right? You are just executing the code, or in Linux it will be a.out. So when you are executing a.exe, this itself is an argument, right? So when I pass a.exe, what is my argument count? That is 1, because I have only one count. And basically the number of variables, how many things I am passing here? I am passing here a.exe. So now let me show you what happens here. For example, if I am passing a.exe, and let's say I am passing three numbers, 7, 3 and 9, right? So now you can see it says that in the loop, what we are saying, printf program name, right? So the first argument variable, right, argv of 0, it is nothing but what you are passing actually. So basically, to execute the code, what I'm typing, I'm typing a.exe, right? I'm typing a.exe. So this is a character array, as you all know, right? Basically, it's a pointer to the base address of the character array. So the first argument, it is a fixed rule. The first argument will always be the name of the file that you are executing. So in Linux, you will have a.out in this case, right? And following that a.exe, following the a.exe, you will have the various arguments. Now, why do it keep it variable? Because we can have multiple variables which are typing. So you can see the argument one is 7, 3 and 9. So let us do one more thing just for more clarity. ARGC is equal to %D, and then we do ARGC. Right? Let us just and this particular code you have to run via command line only, because from VS Code inbuilt, like for example, if I execute this code like this will not work the particular way I want, right? So I just need to do GCC and a.exe. Let's say I am passing 7, 4, 6, and 9. Sorry, it should be /a.exe. Right now you can see what I'm getting the output as argc is 5. Now why argument c is coming argument count? Because if you see I'm passing 7, 4, 6, 9. I passed 4 numbers, but still the argument count is coming as 5. The reason is a.exe is also taken as an argument, even though you actually need to execute this for successful execution. So a.exe itself is taken as an argument. So if you now count, a.exe is 1, 7 is argument 2, 4 is argument 3, 6 is argument 4, and 9 is argument 5. And that is why the argument count is 5. So remember that argument count includes the executable file also, right? And then hence we start the for loop with I is equal to 1, I less than arg count. So in this case it is less than 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So basically if you see when we write the argument count, there is no meaning of argument 0, right? Argument variable 0, because it's a file name itself. It is nothing of a useful parameter. Anything which is passed after the a.exe is basically the argument. So you can see we have taken argument 1, 7, 4, 6, and 9. So let me just pop up a chat window. Okay, the count is 5. So see, if you take only 7, 4, 6, 9, what is the count? The count is 4, right? Because you passed 4 numbers. So let me just write another example. Let me pass 12 and 14, right? So if I'm passing 12 and 14, the count is definitely 2. Or if I'm passing 7, 4, 6, 9, the count is definitely 5. Now see, my program name is a.exe, or in Linux it is a.out. That itself is also counted as an argument. So basically if I tell you to write in, let me just copy this. So when I'm writing a.exe 12.14, and this can be a.out also. So basically this is count 1, this is count 2, and this is count 3, right? So this is how the argument count comes as 3. In this particular case, when I'm having a.exe as 7, 4, 6, and 9. So this is count 1, count, count 1. This will be count 2. This will be count 3, count 4, count 5. So remember that your executable file name is always the first argument taken, right? And whatever you are passing after that is also counted. So both are counted. So even if you don't specify anything, right? Let's say I just execute ./a.exe, I will still have a argument count of 1. Why? Because a.exe itself is a argument, right? That itself is a argument, right? So I hope that makes it clear. Now let me just erase this, or the program won't execute. You can also try on your Dropbox when I'm sharing the program. Now see the actual use of this particular command line. So what is the advantage of passing things through command line? It makes easier for the user, right? Because see what happens in normal market scenarios, when you are writing a code, you actually release the exe for the file. You don't give the source code to the user, right? You don't give the source code to the user, you release it for the user. And it is always better to work on the command line. For example, let me see if man works here. Man GCC, okay, it is searching for GCC. Okay, it does not work here. Fine. Because if you search online for GCC, let's say I'm just searching for the man page of GCC. Man page is manual page. So just see the number of command line switches it is having. So GCC supports -C, -W, -I, -D. These are all command line arguments that we can actually pass through the program, right? So this makes the program actually very powerful to use, right? So you can see there are so many options for warning also. See, these are all command line options. Just imagine the number of command line stuff they have created. Okay, so in this particular command, what I'm actually giving, you can just see the comment using the command line to copy the content of source file to the destination file, right? So I have a source file in this particular case. Let me just delete this. I have a data1.txt. This is known as a source file from where the content will actually get copied. This is the source file. So what is the program name in this particular case? I'm using P21, right? So you can see here, I will just first execute the code. So let me just do GCC P21, right? And I have to pass two command line arguments here. Why? Because I need to copy the content of the source file to the target file. Now, what is a source file in my case? I am having data1.txt. And let's say there is a new file. Let me call it cs10 destination.txt. So I will explain the logic later, but oh, sorry, I have to first just compile the code. Now, first compile. Okay, the code is compiled. Now ./a.exe. Now my source file is data1, and let my target file, or the, this is my target file, right? cs102 target.txt. What this command does basically is copy the content of the source file. So it will copy the content of data1.txt to the target file. The target file in this case is cs102. So as you can see, cs102 is not yet created, right? We have c1 only. And let us see the content of data1. The content of data1 is India is my country. So what this code basically will do is it will copy India is my country into a new file which is known as cs102 target. So let me just execute the code. So see, it executes the code and you can see there is a new file which is created, cs102 target. Now let us see the content of it. The content is India is my country, which is same as data-1.txt. Now let us come back to the code and understand how it worked actually, right? So I am again taking argument count and argument variable. Remember, these argument count and argument variables are passed while executing the code and not while compiling. It is passed when executing the code and not while compiling. So if you see my GCC, I just passed the file name of the program. I am just passing the file name of the program. I am not passing any other argument. I first compiled, and then while executing the code, I was passing the both arguments. So these argc and argv are passed while executing the code, right? So let me enter and it works. So I am taking two file pointers, file source and file target, right? Now I am just checking if the argument count is not equal to 3. Why it will be equal to 3? Because first argument is the execution itself, this is count 1. Second argument is the source file, which is count 2. And the third argument is the destination or target file, which is count 3. So we just check whether the argument is equal to 3 or not. Let me just execute the code with only the source file. Since I'm not giving the target file, it should throw up an error, which it does. See, it says improper number of argument. Even if I give 4 argument, let's say a.text and b.text, it will again say improper number of arguments. Only when I specify exact 3 arguments, it is executing the code. Now see, argv. What is argv? Argv is nothing but the source file. So we can also try to do a print screen here. Printf argv1 is equal to %s, right? Because it's a character array and we just display this particular value. And let us also display the argv1 and the second thing slash n. So it has to be through command line. So any changes, first you need to run via command line. So you can see argv1 is this. And if you again want to be confirm key what is argv0, it is basically nothing but the name of the execution file slash n. So let me do gcc. So you can see argv basically is the complete execution file path. Fine. Then arg1v is the source file which we specified here, and arg2 is the target file that we specified. Fine. And if you see what will be the arg count here, so arg count will be 3 in this case. That will be %d, and it will be just argc slash n. Right, so you can see arg count is 3 because a.exe is the first argument and the two files are the next two arguments. So what I'm doing here is that I am opening a file into the write mode, which is the second argument, which is the target file. That's it. And from the first file, so if you can see, I'm opening the first file argv1 in the read mode. Fine. And I keep on reading that file character by character till I reach the end of the file, right? And then I am just putting it into the target file ft. So I read one character, I put it into the file, into the target file, which I'm using fputc. You can use fprintf or fwrite, whatever you wish to have. Just maintain the syntax. So fputc is one of the easiest things. So you are putting the character ch into the file ft. Later on, you close both the file. Any file operation that we do, it is necessary to close the file. Once we close the file, we return 0 and our target and source files are copied. So again, a very important concept actually. So many of the programs are actually written with the command line usage argument. So just imagine if you're writing a calculator program. So you can actually have something like, let's say ideally it should be /calc.exe. Let's say you say add and you pass 5 and 7, right? So this function basically should return you the sum of 5 and 7 is 12. I'm just giving you an example of how you can actually do this, right? So class, let us have a break for 5 minutes and we will return at 10:54. So you can have a small break and then we will move on to data structures, which is linked list. Okay class, now you can actually open the folder for June 22. So on June 22, so right now we are moving towards the end of the course, and we shall be seeing some data structures. Right now, what is data structure? Nothing but how do we organize the data actually. So like array, we also treat array as a data structure, which you have already seen, right? So there is a new concept which is known as linked list, right? So I will just explain you. Okay, the code looks big, but it is quite simple to understand. So let us go back to the drawing board and let us see what is linked list and how does it help us, right? So see class, whenever you dealt with array, what was the advantage of array is like all the elements are placed continuously. So this was 10, 20, 5 and 12, right? So this was an array. So let's say the base address is 2000, and if it's an integer array, so we will have this as 2004, this as 2008, 2012 and 2016. So from the base address, so let's say we are declaring this a is equal to, right? So we can directly refer. So this was, let's say, let me change the pen color. So this become array of 0, array of 1, array of 2, an array of 3. So you can directly refer them to by index. Now array has of course some advantages. You can directly index, they are stored in continuous memory location, right? Very fast and very efficient to work upon. But the issue with an array is, let me just explain you in another diagram. So let's say this is an array here. Right? This is such a huge array here. And now you want to basically insert a new element at this particular position between 3 and 7. Let's say the new element is 45, right? So now the issue with array is that since you want to insert this 45 in between these elements, right? What you basically need to do is like first create a space here. So what do you mean by creating a space here? So we want something like 1, 2, 3, a blank space for 45, 7, 9, 21, and 4, right? So now you can see in this particular case what is happening is we have to move all the elements by one location, right? So we have to move all the elements by one location, and then one space gets filled, and then we can insert the new element, which is 45, which is 45. Now if you can see, let's say you have an array which is 1 million size, right? You have 1 million size. 1 million is basically 10 lakh, right? So let's say this is the first element, 1, 2, and so on. This is the 1 millionth element, right? Just for simplicity, I am keeping it like 1, 2, 3, 4 up to 1 million. Now let's say there is a programming requirement where you want to insert an element between 1 and 2. Let's say this element is 1.5. You want to insert the average of this between here. So if you see how many elements you have to move, you have to move from 2 to 10 lakh. You have to move all the elements on the right hand side, right? So this is roughly, you have to move 10 lakh operations, right? You have to do 10 lakh move operation. So just like 2 will be shifted to the next position, then this position, then this position, and then 1 lakh will be shifted to the next position. So as you can see now, if you want to insert an element in an array, this process becomes very, very cumbersome, right? It is very heavy on the memory. Similar case happens when you want to delete something, right? So let's say we have an element here. So we have 1, 2, 5, 12, 9, and 6, let's say, right? Let's say you want to delete 5, right? So if you want to delete 5, what happens is like, so let's say you want to delete 5. So what will happen? This particular space will be now blank, right? This particular space has to be now blank. So now you need to reorder the elements, right? Reorder the elements means you need to move, because array locations are contiguous. So you have 1, 2, now 5 is deleted, 12, 9, and 6. So now what is happening? Again, I am moving an operation. I am moving this particular thing to the previous location. Fine. So as you see, again, if this we had 1 million nodes and we are deleting the second or the third element, we roughly have to do 1 million move operations, right? As a result, the array operation becomes extremely expensive on the memory. Of course, it has an advantage that you can directly index this, like this is a of 2, right? Because first element is a of 0 and this is a of 2. Everything is taken. But the disadvantage is moving operations, right? If you insert an element or if you delete an element, then it becomes very heavy on the memory, right? So basically, if you have n elements in an array, we typically say that how much will be the maximum? Maximum will be n elements, right? Why? Because let's say you have 1, 2, 3, and you want to insert something at the first place. Let's say you want to insert now 0, 1, 2, 3, like this. So in this case, you need to move 1, 2, and 3. So we had 3 elements. So n is equal to 3. So move operation in the worst case will be 3, right? What will be a move operation in the best case? Best case is nothing but if you want to have an element at the last, so then you don't have to move anything, right? So this was just the basic difference between an array and a linked list. I mean, basically, why do you require a linked list in the first place? Now, let me tell you what is the concept of a linked list, right? And always remember, in computer science, there is one golden rule. There is nothing which is perfect, right? So in linked list, right? So now just forget the term linked list. Just take it something like, for example, I have a rectangle here, right? We just think this of a game, fine. If you remember the train, right? So I am a very bad at drawing. So let's say this is, I'm having an engine here, and this is basically the goods train, right? So if you see how they are connected to one another, right? So what happens basically, this particular coach is only attached to this particular coach, right? This particular coach is only attached to this particular coach, and this particular coach is attached to this particular coach, right? And basically in the last we have, there is a special coach here where usually a person stands and he just maintains, right? So you can see, even though one coach is only attached to one coach, we can basically have the entire train which is running, right? This is the direction of the running. Similarly, you can visualize a linked list to be like a train coach or a train bogie, the entire train, right? So let's say for an example, now just forget the technicalities. What happens here? Let me have some elements here. So let's say we have 10, 5, let's say 42, right? So these are like, you can just assume like the bogies of a train, right? These are just like the bogies of the train, and this is the engine, right? Let me just write, this is like the engine element, and this is the coach 1, and this is the coach 2, right? And now they are connected with one another. Let me just connect them. So this coach is connected to this particular coach, and this coach is connected to this particular coach, right? And this is a last coach, so we just say, okay, there is a special thing which is in the last, right? Just to indicate here, right? So in this, basically, this is basically known as a linked list structure. Now let's say, of course, I'm not going much into the technicalities. Let me just change the pen color to black. Now let's say you want to insert, let's say, a new coach between 10 and 5, right? Let's say new coach is there. So what you will do, you will have a 10 here, right? You already have a 5 here, fine. So now what happens, let's say the new element is 3. So I have a new element here. Okay, let me just keep a pen color as, So this is my new coach, which is 3. Fine. Initially, my link is already attached. If you see in the previous case, let me just keep the same pen color. Initially, my link is already attached with this coach. This is the coach, and this is the engine, right? Now I want to insert a new element, which is 3. Fine. So now what do I do in this particular case? Now if you logically see, if I want to insert this particular coach in the goods train between these two, right? So what can I do as a shortcut is, okay, let me take a red. So I will remove this particular link, right? And what will I do? Assume this chain color is pink. Instead of this, I will join this to this particular coach. So I am locking this particular thing. And since each coach can be joined to the other coach, so let me just keep. So what will I do? I will keep the link between this to this particular thing, right? So what I do, I just break the original link, right? I have a new coach here. So the joint between the 10 and the 5, the coach number 10 and the coach number 5, I just took it off and I just plugged in the joint to basically this 3, and then I just made this particular joint to join the next coach. So this was basically my new coach, right? And of course the later chain continues like this, right? 42 and this. So you can see, just imagine the goods train, right? So in the goods train, if you want to add something, what do? You just remove the basically the notch and just attach it to a new coach. Now similar thing happens. Now let's say if this you consider, if your example is this only, let's say if you want to remove this coach, right? If you want to remove this particular coach, so what will be the diagram representation of it? So let's say this coach is out of order. There is some maintenance which is required. So originally you had a 10, you had a 5, and you had a 42, which was the last coach. This was our engine, right? And the train is moving in the direction of the engine, right? Now if you see particularly, I want to basically delete 5. So I want to actually remove this particular thing. I want to delete this 5. So now if I delete this 5, you can see that this will become invalid and this will become invalid, right? Because I'm deleting 5, the chain connecting to 5 and the chain coming out of 5, that is emanating from 5, right? Both will become invalid, right? So I should have a solution here. So what I need to do is like, so let me again redraw. So let me keep it at its original position only, because that is the advantage of linked list. You need not move anything. So now what I will do here is that this particular link, right? Because now this joint is free for me, right? I will take this joint and basically connect it to the link joining 42, right? So I directly will say, okay, I am erasing 5 and now I am connecting 10 and 42, right? So this is what is linked list. For linked list, the best example is of goods train, right? The goods trains is connected one coach to the another coach, just like we have said here. They are joined via particular link, fine. And every element, let's say this is our engine. If I take the long route train, we have coaches like S1, S2, sleeper 1, sleeper 2, sleeper 3, and so on. So linked list is nothing but just like a data structure like arrays, but has an efficient operation. So you can see I need not move anything. I just need to relink, right? If I want to insert an element like 3 here, I just change two links, but I don't move anything else in the array. I just change. I just update from this link to this link, and I just update from this link to this link. I edit two links, and basically everything works well. Now then you may think, okay, if this is such a good data structure, then why do you actually need array, right? But of course, as I said, in computer science, there are issues with everything, right? So if you see in this particular case, in linked list, I am also maintaining a link with every element, right? There is an element 10 along with this is the link. There is an element 5, but I need to also information of the link to which it is pointing next. Again, this is also a link, but this basically the last thing we say as this is the null link, right? So if you have 10 elements, you also need to keep a track of 10 links also, right? If you have 10 elements or if you have 100 elements, then you basically need 100 links along with it. Fine. Now, what is the again a disadvantage of linked list? See, this particular structure, what I have shown you as an example, this is completely dynamic in nature, right? What do I mean by dynamic? Let's say the variable name here is LL, linked list. So I cannot index it. I cannot index. So I cannot say LL of 2. So LL of 2 cannot be 42, right? Or you cannot say LL of 0 is 10. No, that is not possible, right? So you cannot say indexing of linked list elements. You cannot refer them to by index. So every time if you want to refer, you have to traverse from the engine to the last coach. So just imagine in the long route train, as you know, all the coaches are connected, right? S1, S2, ST, AS1, right? B1, B2. So let's say you are in coach B1, and let's say your friend is in coach B4. So you have to start from B1, go to B2, then B3, and then B4, right? You cannot directly go to B4. Fine. Similarly, let's say you are in the coach which is adjacent to the engine, first coach, let's say S1, and your friend is in the last coach. You have to travel through all the bogies and reach the last position. So this is the disadvantage of linked list. Whereas in arrays you can directly index A of 22, A of 45. Directly you reach that location. Why? Because they are stored in a contiguous fashion. But it does not happen in linked list. For linked list, let's say there are 1 million nodes, that is 10 lakh nodes, and you want to access that 10 lakh element. You have to start from the engine, that is the first node, and then go up to the last node. Fine. So this is the concept of linked list. So yeah, any doubts or any issues? So this is the representation. Just remember the good strains example, and let us take a break for 5 minutes, and then we will see just the one program of linked list. How does it work, and how do we define a linked list? Right. So let us meet at 11:18 or something like this. By the time I will just pause it. Okay, class. So back to the program on linked list. It is shared on the Dropbox also, so you can just have a feel of the program, right? So as I said, ki when we are working on the okay, so as you saw that when we were working on the linked list, we had two things here, right? We had a data here and the link here, right? So let's say the data was 10 here, and we had a link here, right? And it was connecting to all the links in the end, and everything was a data here and the link, right? And as we said, the example of a goods train, we had engine here, right? So if you see in a goods train, we usually have only one engine. Of course, some cases there are double powered engine, but okay, we just say that there is only one engine. right, to the front of it, right? Now let me just show you how it connects to the linked list example, right? So as you can see that we need a particular structure which has a data and which has a link also along with it, right? So what happens here in this case, we have to create a structure now. Why structure? Because we need something which has a data and which has a pointer. So you can see that structure node is there, right? Because in linked list what happens is like you have a linked list which is pointing. So if you see this as an individual element, we need a pointer that can point to a list which is having a similar structure, right? We need this pointer to point something which is of the same type of this, right? So you can see in this particular structure it has two boxes, one has a data and one has a link. So basically what happens, if you see, we have a data and we have something called as next, right? Next, usually we use the term next because this link points to the next element of the linked list. This link points to the next element of the linked list. Similarly, when we create a node, we will have something of this sort, right? Now what happens here, let us come back to the main. So this is the structure and you see there is a node here which is known as structure node head, which is defined as null. Now what is this structure node head? Head, if you see, head is the topmost element. Head is basically, you can remember with our analogy as a engine. Engine is basically the first element, right? So what I'm doing here, I'm doing structure node and I'm defining just a pointer. You can see we have a star head here. We are just defining a pointer which is null. So now let us come back to the drawing board, and what will happen here is, so structure node is defined like this. This is the data and this is the next. Next is nothing but a pointer to the next element. Fine. Now what we are saying, we are defining a head pointer, right? So head basically will point to something. As of now, we don't know what it is pointing. So right now we are pointing it to null, right? So head as of now is not pointing anywhere. It is pointing to null. So this gets cancelled, right? Now let us see what happens, right? We have two functions, insert and display. Let us forget that. Let us come to main, right? The execution begins with the main. So first I'm clearing the screen and now I'm calling the insert function with the value 10, right? I'm calling the insert function with a value 10. Okay. Now what happens when you call the insert function with a value 10? So we come to the insert function and 10 basically comes as the variable x, right? X now stores 10. Now see what I'm doing here. I'm defining again a struct node and I'm allocating the size of this. So whenever you are dealing with data structure, you make use of malloc, right? Why? Because see, in arrays you have to define like 50 elements, 100 elements, something like this. In linked list you did not do like this. You just keep on adding one element at one time. So what I am doing here, see, I am allocating size of structure node and then typecasting it to the structure pointer. So what is the size of structure node? This 4 bytes is for this particular data and the pointer, how much it takes, right? Usually the pointer will take 4 bytes in normal cases, right? So now what I'm doing, whenever I'm creating a new malloc structure, see, I'm coming to the insert function and in this particular case, x is equal to 10, right? So what I'm doing, I'm creating a structure node. What does that mean? I'm creating this particular position. So what I'm doing, basically I'm creating a node here. What is the name of the node? The node name is basically link. Link is pointing to this particular thing, right? We already have something called a structure node head, right? Which is nothing but the pointer which is null, right? Now I have a link structure here which contains two things, but I have not defined anything. What will this be, right? Now you see what I'm saying, link hyphen data, link arrow data is equal to x. right? So we know that our structure has two things, a data part and a next part. So what it is saying, link dot data is equal to x, right? So what was x in our case? X in our case was 10. So this comes 10 here. Now what it is saying, head. What did head contain? Head contained actually null, right? Head was pointing to null. So basically it means link dot next is basically nothing but a null element. So let me keep it red here. So what happens here? Link dot head is now null. Of course, when we created link here, link was pointing to our base address, kind of this particular thing. Now we have link dot data is x, link dot next is this. Now see what I do, I update the head pointer. You see, head was null in this particular case. Head was null. Now I am saying that a link is equal to head. That means link was pointing to this particular element. Now head will be pointing to this particular element, right? So a bit tricky at the start. So let us come back again to the insert loop. I will explain it again quickly. So we will again see it tomorrow. In insert, when x is 10, we create a structure node, right? We create a structure node link. So we create an empty box like this. This is data, this is next. Why this is like this? Because our structure is like this. We are creating a new node with a pointer, and this is the representation. Okay. Now we are saying link the data, right? So basically this is nothing but link. Now we say link, the data in which the link is pointing is basically x, which is nothing but 10. So this becomes 10. Now we say that the link next, right? So basically this particular thing is basically equal to head. And what did head contain? Head contained null. So now this will become null. In the last, what we say that the address of link is now copied to head. So what we are doing, we are basically updating head to point to the same position that link is pointing, right? So now both the link and the head are pointing to this particular position, and head is nothing but like an engine. Fine. Head is nothing but like an engine. Now what happens in the next case? I am inserting 20. Again what happens now? X in this case becomes 20. Again I am creating a node. So let us see what will happen here. So let me have a different pen color for different node. Initially I create a blank node, right? I don't know what is the position of this. So I put link dot data is equal to x, right? So this again is link now. Because the function got over, link value is destroyed now. Now link is pointing to this position. Link, the next of the link is now head, right? You are declaring head as a global thing, right? Now what in the end, what do you do? Head is equal to link. So now what will happen here? What was head pointing to initially? Head was pointing to this 10 element. Now what I'm saying that a link next should point to head. So link next, this should now point to the place where head is pointing. So it is pointing to this, right? And finally what we say, head is equal to link. We had this link. Now basically head becomes this position, and this value for the head is lost, right? Now you see what happened. 20, now head is pointing to 20, and 20 link is pointing to 10, and the 10 in the last has a null here, right? So now my linked list basically begins with 20. Why it begins with 20? Because it is the position of the head element. Again, now let us see what happens when we insert 30. So guys, when you execute this code, you just try to write it on a piece of paper. You will get the feel of it, right? We will explain this program again tomorrow. When we insert 30, what happens? We create a link here. Initially, this is now the link node. Why linked node? Because we create a structure node, then the data is X. In this particular case, the data is 30. So 30 comes here. Let me change the pen color. And what is the next? Next is pointing to the head. Head was actually pointing to 20. So now this is pointing to 20, right? So head is pointing to 20 and this particular link is also now pointing to 20. So there are two arrows. What we do then next? Head is equal to link. So we remove the head from this position and we now keep head at this position. Now what becomes? Head is pointing to 30. The link to 30 is pointing to 20. The link to 20 is pointing to 10. And finally it is null. Null is like the last coach. And finally what we are doing? We are doing display, right? As I said in linked list, so in the display function, what you are doing? You are defining a pointer which is having the head variable. So basically the PTR is basically containing this, right? PTR contains the head address. So head and PTR both are pointing to the same element. And what do you do? This is a standard for every linked list. We check the pointer till the point it has not reached the null. Why null? Because if you see in our last element, the last element became 10 and which has the next as null. So we keep on traversing the list till we reach the null. So basically first we come at 30. The next of 30 is not null. Why? Because it is pointing to 20. The next of 20 is not null. So we again traverse. But the next of 10 is null. So we come and stop here. Right? So guys, I think we are overshooting the time. I will go through this program once again. My advice would be just to run the code on your machine and try to understand. Make a structure like data and next, and then you will understand it very easily. So I'm stopping here today, guys. You have a break for 30 minutes. So we will again see this same program tomorrow also. So that's it for today. So you all can exit, guys. You all can exit now.